A square lash is used to join two pieces of wood at any angle that fall on each other directly as such. It's one of your basic lashes and you need to know it. Before we get into the square lash, first you need to understand the principle of flow of the rope. The flow of the rope is a very intricate concept. Knowing it, you are able to tie tighter knots and your knots or lashes will be more effective. Let me demonstrate that to you by first tying a clove hitch. As you can see, this is a clove hitch. The longer end of the rope side that you will use mainly for your lashing, falls to the right. Now, if I pull on this right side, you'll notice that the clove hitch doesn't budge. However, if I pull it on the left side, the knot gets loosened. Now, pulling it on the left side is called against the flow of the rope because you're applying pressure on the knot where it's not meant for the pressure to be exerted on. Now, when I pull on the right side of the rope, it does not budge because the force I exert flows naturally from the rope and I can exert it without worrying about my knot loosening or slipping. That's the flow of the rope concept. So, now on to the square lash. Before we start the rounds of your square lash, we want to secure this clove hitch just in case. What you want to do is tie a thumb knot. Your clove hitch is tied on the vertical of almost all your structures. Is to be tied on the supporting pole or the supporting wood. This is to lend support to the square lash finally. So after you have tied the thumb knot on the clove hitch, we can begin our rounds. First, rotate your clove hitch so that the flow of the rope is towards the front of the square lash. Next, put your pole at the desired angle and you can begin your rounds. Do note that for your rounds, they must be perpendicular to the wood. As you can see, these are straight and at nice angles, nice 90-degree angles. Now, after the first round, or towards the end of the first round, I have rotated the two poles with the back facing the camera. Now, for the second round, you want the rope to go above the clove hitch. The rationale behind this is that when force is exerted on the horizontals, the force gets transmitted to this second round and eventually the third round and act downwards onto the clove hitch, thereby lending even more strength to your square lash. Do note that as you pull the rounds, you have to thumb the rope. What I mean thumbing the rope is just put your thumb on the rope, exert a bit of force so that the rope is held in place, so that tension is maintained. Now, turning back to the front of the square lash. For the second round, your rope goes on the outside of your first round. Now when we reach the top of the square lash, you want to note that the second round falls under the first round. Thus, as you tie the square lash, the ropes on the back come closer towards each other, and the ropes on the front move away from each other. Now just let me complete this. Now I have 3 rounds. For the rounds at the bottom of your square lash, you will see 5 lines over here. 3 rounds at the top and your clove hitch. This is a mistake that many people make, where they tie only either 4 rounds and leave out the 5th round, or they just don't do it at all. Now, after you have done all 3 rounds, you want to begin your 3 fraps. The rope travels downwards and in between the 2 poles. After every half a frap, be sure to pull. When you pull, you need to be sure to pull along the line of force. That means if your rope is traveling straight, you pull it away from you. If it's traveling down, pull it downwards and carry on for 3 fraps. After your first frap, you'll notice that you'll come to an intersection. Over here, what you need to take note of is not to overlap the ropes. From here you can see that the rope will travel nicely on the right side of my first frap. You tend to not want to pull the rope upwards because you will not be able to use as much force as possible, because humans are designed that way. The places where you can exert maximum force will definitely be downwards. However, if you are tying this horizontal to the structure, you do not want to exert the force downwards, because every time you do so, you'll be pushing this horizontal down, making the knot looser. So, if this is for a structure, you must be sure to pull the rope along the horizontal. Now, after you have done 3 fraps, 1, 2, 3, you want to end your knot. Remember that your knot must be ended on the wood or the piece of pole which does not contain your clove hitch. First, tie a half hitch. To lock the square lash in place. And finally, end with a clove hitch. Now, once you're done tying your square lash, you need to check whether it's wrong. How do you check whether it's wrong? First of all, your rounds must be perpendicular to the wood. Both front and both back. Next, you cannot have any overlaps. Overlaps means that any of your ropes must not crisscross with another rope. If you study the square lash carefully, you will notice that this does not occur anywhere except the intersection between your rounds and your frapping. Last but not least, you want to make sure that your square lash is tight. How do you check if it's tight? Push down against the frapping from the top. If it's tight, you'll notice that your frapping will not budge in any way. The way the square lash works is that it prevents both horizontal and vertical rotation. The square lash does not allow your wood to move or rotate freely in the horizontal axis and the vertical axis. This is done so through your rounds. Because your rounds are at perpendicular angles, the force exerted against the wood is at perpendicular angles. And because of that, that helps lock the wood in place and to one another. Your frapping compacts your rounds so that the rounds are more able to hold your two pieces of wood together. That in turn prevents the wood from having any rotational movement, and that's what we want.